Good morning, men. You can't start here unless you say that phrase. Nobody listens to a word you say until you say that. So good morning. It is good to be with you this morning. When I think of brothers, I think of lots of different things. But you'll notice I've put the scriptures we're going to be in here today, John 5 and Genesis 3. But I've also put these 3 Greek letters, and this table up here nailed it. Those are Greek letters for Alpha Sigma Phi. That was the fraternity that I was in college. I went to a little school outside of Boston called Tufts University, and I had a great time there. Now, my father's in the room, so I have to sort of tone this story down a little bit. But I went to Tufts 4 years, 4.5 years, but it was a good time. And I majored in fraternity and minored in psychology, and I had a really good time. I had a good band of brothers. Now, I led an interesting life in college because for a couple of years, I led 2 lives. I was involved in the Tufts Christian Fellowship in the InterVarsity chapter on our campus. And it was a group of Christian students who we had Bible studies and went on retreats together and did those kinds of things. And then I was in a fraternity. And my fraternity brothers really didn't know about my Christian fellowship life, and my Christian fellowship friends really didn't know about my fraternity life. I totally was able to compartmentalize those 2 parts of my life. And I really enjoy fraternity life. Not the drinking and partying side. Certainly some of that stuff went on, but I enjoyed the business side of it. We founded our fraternity. We started our fraternity chapter while I was there. And we had to recruit guys to become part of the fraternity. And we did service projects together. And we hung out on Thursday nights and played poker. And it was on one of these Thursday nights that one of the major turning points in my life happened. You see, when I was a senior in college, my father had a heart attack. And he was on a business trip. He was out in Taos, New Mexico, and skiing down the side of a mountain, and went into the ski lodge not really feeling well, and friends finally convinced him to go to the ski patrol, and happened to be a cardiologist on duty in the ski patrol tent, happened to be a cardiologist on duty in the ski patrol tent, and they put the EKG on him, and they said, "You've had a heart attack." And so they took care of him. They put him in an ambulance, went down to the hospital, and did the stuff that they were supposed to do, and ended up at Yale New Haven Hospital in Connecticut. Now, I'm in Boston. He's in New Haven. It's about 2 hours away. And he was fine. He wasn't healthy. I mean, they were fixing those things, but he was fine. And I knew he was okay. So now we're about 10 days after this heart attack, and I'm sitting in one of my fraternity brothers' apartments, and we had this thing called TNT, Thursday Night Tradition. And we would we would go to somebody's apartment or somebody's house, and we would play poker and smoke cigars, and they would go to we call it a packy in Boston, go to the liquor store and buy whatever beer was on sale, which of course meant it tasted just disgusting. So there's a group of guys sitting around, and I didn't drink at the time. That's another story. And I'm sitting there, and we're playing poker, and I'm winning, of course. And but my head is just down. And finally, one of my fraternity brothers looked at me, and he threw his cards on the table. And I won't quote him exactly, but he said, "What is your deal?" And I said, nothing, what's wrong?" He's like, "Man, ever since your father had a heart attack, you have been the most depressed guy I've ever seen. What is going on? Is he all right?" And I said, "Yeah, he's all right. He's at Yale New Haven Hospital, and they did all the stuff they're supposed to do, and it looks like he's going to be fine." And he's like, "Well, you need to go." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "You need to go. You need to go. Right now. You need to go. It's midnight now." And we're sitting around, and I've got a half-drunk fraternity brother looking at me and telling me, "You need to go home." And his name was Dave. I said, "Dave, I can't go home. It's midnight." And he's like, "Look, you haven't been drinking. you're no use to anybody around here. You need to go see your dad. You just need to go. And I said, I came up with all these excuses. I can't. I got assignments due. I got exams next week. I can't just go. So he said, yeah, you can. So he called over some of the brothers, some of the pledges, and he distributed the workload. He had a couple guys go to my classes for me and take notes. And he had a guy walk me back to my room and help me get packed, throw some stuff in a duffel bag. And he himself took the responsibility in going and talking to my professors. Now, I don't know what he said to them, but when I got back, they acted like my father had died. I mean, Dave was a salesman. And so I went home. At 12 o'clock in the morning, I got in my car with coffee that my fraternity brothers had given me, and I went home. Now, here's the interesting thing about that. My Christian friends knew my dad had had a heart attack too, but none of them said a word to me about it. But my fraternity brothers, when they figured out what I needed, they took care of me. They stepped up. And that actually affected my walk for years and years after that. To the point that frankly, I just sort of went through the motions on the Christian side. Because, these guys, these drunken fools, most of them, engineers, we called them, IR and engineer they had on their shirt. They took care of me. They knew what to do. They figured out what to do, and they took care of me. And my Christian friends had sort of just faded into the woodwork. And so that affected me. I went on a men's retreat about 3 weeks ago. Any Willow Creekers here? You were there, right? I went on this men's retreat. Was that awesome or what? I got to tell you, man, we went to Horns Creek, Tennessee on the Ocoee River. In one weekend, we played golf, played paintball, went whitewater rafting, had this high ropes course that you could do with the rock wall and the zip line, did this incredible mud bog adventure race thing that it was really fun, and I hope I never have to do it ever again. And just had this amazing time. And one of the guys got up on one of the evenings, and he asked this question. He said, "Who could you call at 2 a.m.? If something happened to you, if your child, wife got in an accident, or your daughter got attacked, or something happened in your life, your house burned down, who could you call at 2 a.m.? Do you have somebody that you could call at 2 a.m.? And that just struck a chord with me. It really struck a chord with me. Because if you look around, most guys really don't have very many close friends. In fact, many guys have absolutely no close friends. They have acquaintances. They have guys whose names they know. We're joking at the men's retreat, how does one guy that really doesn't know somebody say hi to another guy at the church? Right? A lot of you are nodding. It's the chin thing, Hey, man. Right? And that's what we do. We go through life sort of raising our chin at people. Hey, how you doing? Favorite word in the man's language? Fine. How you doing? Fine. Or, if you're a salesman, Dennis Pulio, awesome. How you doing? Awesome. Doesn't really mean anything different than fine does. It's just a word that we say to sort of keep people out here. And so the question that I have for you this morning to really think about is, truly, at 2 a.m., who could you call? If you had a problem, if you needed somebody, who could you call at 2 o'clock in the morning? If you turn in your Bibles to John chapter 5, there's a story of a guy that had nobody that he could call at 2 o'clock in the morning. John chapter 5 is the story of a man at a healing pool. Let me read it to you, starting at verse 1. Sometime later, Jesus went up to Jerusalem for a feast of the Jews. Now there is in Jerusalem near the sheep gate a pool, which in Aramaic is called Bethesda, and which is surrounded by 5 covered colonnades. Here a group Here a great number of disabled people used to lie, the blind, the lame, the paralyzed. So here's the scenario. You've got this pool that ever so often the water stirred, the Spirit of God came, and whoever got into the pool would be healed. What seems to be is like the first person that got into the pool, whatever infirmity they had, would be healed. One who was there, verse 5, one who was there had been an invalid for 38 years. When Jesus saw him lying there and learned that he had been in this condition for a long time, he asked him, "Do you want to get well?" "Sir," the invalid replied, "I have no one to help me into the pool when the water is stirred. When I'm trying to get in, someone else goes down ahead of me." Then Jesus said to him, "Get up, pick up your mat and walk." At once the man was cured, and he picked up his mat and he walked. So let me ask you a question. Why in the world would this guy lay next to this pool for 38 years and nobody would help him into the pool? I have a theory. I think he was a jerk. I think he had alienated himself from everybody in his life. I think he had no family, and I think if anybody tried to be his friends, he probably pushed them away. I bet that this guy laying on a mat in a courtyard for 38 years, totally relying on the charity of others to feed him and to get him clothes, I guess, when his stuff was tattered, maybe get him a new mat when the rain and the sun had made his mat disintegrate and he needed a new one. I'll bet you this guy was a total jerk. And maybe he had good reason. I mean, he was an invalid. You know, he could have been bitter about that. Maybe he was injured through no fault of his own. Maybe he was, a birth defect. Who knows what it was? But the fact of the matter is that for someone to lie there for 38 years and the pool's right there and I can't get someone to help me into it, something's going on. Something's going on. How do we get like this? Well, we get like this because of the fall. So let's turn to Genesis chapter 3. Let's look at exactly how we get like this. How do we get isolated? You know, one of the things that I love about the Bible is this. The Bible is true in the sense that the things that are in it, the stories that are in it, the historical facts that it portrays, those are true things. But even more importantly, in my opinion, is the Bible is truth. And what I mean when I say that is the Bible just doesn't describe events that have happened, but the Bible actually describes accurately and perfectly the way the world works and why the world works that way. There is really nothing that happens in our society, in our culture, in our world that isn't explained in this book, even from a base sort of philosophical level. It's explained in this book, and nowhere is this more evident than in this description of how man becomes isolated, how we tend towards isolation. So looking at Genesis, just real quick, in Genesis 2, verse 18, God says this, "The Lord God said, 'It is not good for the man to be alone. I will make a helper suitable for him.'" So right there, God has said, it's not good for man to be alone. Now, do you all agree with that? It's not good for man to be alone. We're not made to be alone. God said that right from the start. So then how do we tend towards this isolation? How do we tend to isolate ourselves? Well, let's look at chapter 3. "Now the serpent was more crafty than any of the wild animals the Lord God had made. He said to the woman, 'Did God really say you must not eat from any tree in the garden?' The woman said to the serpent, 'We may eat from the fruit from the trees in the garden, but God did say you must not eat fruit from the tree that is in the middle of the garden, and you must not touch it or you will die.' 'You're surely not going to die,' the serpent said to the woman, 'for God knows that when you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil.' When the woman saw that the fruit of the tree was good for food and pleasing to the eye, and also desirable for gaining wisdom, she took some and ate it." Now here's the key sentence in this whole passage. You ready? "She also gave some to her husband, who was actually across the garden on the South 40, tilling the soil, taking care of things, and this whole thing with the serpent happened out of his earshot, and he didn't know anything that was going on, and she called him over and said, honey, I want to put a blindfold on you. I want you to try this new fruit I just found. And so she blindfolded him and she gave him the fruit, the forbidden fruit, but he really didn't know what it was. And he took a big bite out of it, and he took the blindfold off, and he went, oh, what did you do? Anybody say that? No, mine doesn't say that either. It says, she also gave some to her husband, altogether now, who was with her. And he ate it. Golly. Can you believe this? God says, I'm going to give you everything. Just this one thing. I need to know that you'll rely on me. I need to know that you'll trust me. I need to know that you'll obey me. You need to know that you'll obey me. So I'm just going to keep this one thing off limits, all right? And if you'll obey me, if you'll be dependent on me, if you'll let me tell you what is truth and what is not truth, then we'll have perfect relationship with each other. And Adam blows it. He stands there and he listens to this whole conversation that his wife has with the serpent. He watches him twist words. In the beginning, the serpent says, did God tell you you can't eat fruit? Did God really say you can't eat any fruit in the garden? I mean, right off the bat, the serpent starts lying to her. Right? And does Adam speak up and say, hey, dude, leave my wife alone. We know what we're allowed to do. We know the rules. We know how this thing works. No, he just stands there and lets the woman stick up for God. And she says, no, he didn't say we couldn't eat anything. He just said there's this one thing we can't eat. And because if we do, there's this bad consequence. And then the serpent says, you know what? God lies. It's not really how it is. It's not really that you're going to die. It's this other thing that actually is a pretty good thing. And Adam stands there and does nothing. Adam lacks courage. Adam doesn't step up. And the result of that is what happens next. Then the man and his wife, then the eyes of both, verse 7, the eyes of both of them were open, and they realized that they were naked, so they sewed fig leaves together and made coverings for themselves. Verse 8, then the man and his wife heard the sound of the Lord God as he was walking in the garden in the cool of the day, and they hid from the Lord God among the trees of the garden. But the Lord God called to the man, where are you? And he answered, I heard you in the garden, and I was afraid because I was naked, so I hid. Here's what happened with Adam, and this happens with us too. First of all, as he stood there, Eve was supposed to be Adam's helper, not the other way around. God said, I will make a helper suitable for the man. And Adam named her, woman from me, from man. And then, so this is Adam's job. She's his helper. He's not her helper. So the first thing that happened is that Adam forgot who he was. He forgot his identity. Adam forgot his identity. Then the second thing that he did was he stood there and he watched this whole thing happen and he failed to act. Adam was irresponsible. And then, as a result of that, Adam hid. And ever since Adam hid from God, that's exactly what we've all been doing. We've been hiding. This is where shame comes from, not guilt. Guilt is the appropriate feeling of remorse over something bad that you did. Shame is when you feel like you can never be good enough for God anymore because of what you did. And that's what happened to Adam. He said, you know what? We'll never be good enough. In fact, even the skin that we have isn't good enough for God anymore. We have to cover it up. And so Adam isolated. He took his wife and they went and hid. And we've been hiding ever since. We've been isolating ourselves ever since. And we do it in different ways. What's the number one way that you see men isolating themselves? Work. Right? Because it says before the fall, God put Adam in the garden to work it. God made us to work. But then afterwards it says, hey, guess what? I'm going to make the work hard. because you're only going to get crops from the ground by toil and the sweat of your brow. So I'm going to make work hard. So man goes, oh, well, work is hard, and I kind of want to isolate myself. Hey, there's a good excuse. I got to work hard now. And so man isolates himself with work. Now, we isolate ourselves in other ways. I saw plenty of fraternity brothers isolate themselves with alcohol. And we do that. We isolate ourselves with drug and alcohol use. We can isolate ourselves by appearing to not be isolated, by going through series of relationships over and over and over again. Maybe having 2 and 3 relationships with with different women going on at the same time. Maybe one you're married to and a couple that you're not. But empty relationships that aren't really real. These are the different ways that we isolate ourselves. So here's the problem. Here's the problem is I'm 2 slides behind. Now I know how Pat feels. Here's where we started. When we think of brothers, we think of different things. One of the things that I think of is my fraternity brothers. That's actually an extra circle that's not on your page. So we have this guy at the pool. He isolates himself. Can you guys see that? It says all by myself in the upper left-hand circle. All by myself. We isolate ourselves. And we isolate ourselves because of what happened in the garden. Because right from the beginning, the result of sin is that we hide from God, and we've taken that hiding from God and we've transferred it into all these different areas of our lives. We isolate ourselves. So if this is the problem, if isolation is the problem, if separation from God and separation from healthy relationships is the problem, well, then the answer, obviously, is to overcome this isolation. And what my premise to you this morning, my argument to you this morning, is the best way to overcome this isolation is to surround yourself with a band of brothers, with a group of guys who also are trying to overcome this isolation, who also want to know God better, who also want to make life work better than it already is. The problem is that when we talk about this in the church all the time. We talk about this in the church all the time. You need to be in relationships. How do we get people to go into relationships in churches? Small groups? How else? Say it over here. It was a funny one. All right. Committees? Good. Sunday school classes? My favorite. Potluck suppers? Right? Softball teams, actually softball teams, that's good. So we go into a church, all right, we tend to isolate, all of us tend to isolate, and we walk into the church, and they go, you gotta be brothers, you gotta have these people around you gotta go to the Sunday school class, and you gotta sit at a table with a group of people that you don't know, and you gotta tell them stuff, and you gotta be in a small group, you gotta go, and you have to sit with a group of men around a table, and you have to share with them the most intimate, dark secrets of your life so that you can become closer to Christ together. Yeah. And you should have felt how every muscle in Jim's body was stiff right there. But this is what we do. We say to guys, hey, you got to be in these relationships because we know what's wrong. We just don't know how to fix it. And the way that we fix it often is backwards. It's backwards. Now, we were on this men's retreat together, right? So, the first thing we did on the men's retreat was, do you remember? Find your room. Should have talked to him beforehand, shouldn't I? First thing we did was separate into groups and sit down and start praying about our sin of the last week together, right? No. First thing we did was we put our bathing suits on, right? And we went to this water slide that was what? 100 feet high? 100 feet down, literally down the side of this mountain. This thing was so steep that we all had bruises on the tops of our butts because you would come down to the bottom of this thing and you would pull G's as you went forward, and you just sort of sat on this thing and went. And you were going, I mean, easily 90 miles an hour. All right, maybe not that fast. But you were going at a good clip down so that when you hit the bottom of this water slide, man, it hurt. And I got to climb, there was a rock wall there that looked pretty easy until I got about 5 feet off the ground and realized that they were spraying water at you as you were climbing the rock wall. And had a group of guys around me cheering me up the wall. That was kind of nice. And then we sat around that night a little bit together, and a few guys just sort of shared stories about prior years that they'd been on their retreat and things that had happened. And then the next day, we didn't get up and sit around and share intimate details yet. No, some of us went off and played golf, and some of us went off and shot each other with paintball guns. And then we had lunch together, and then we came back that afternoon, and we had other things to do. We had this adventure race thing. We had all these different things that we did together. And then the second night we were there, we sat around again in a large room, and we sang some songs together, and some more guys shared. And you know what? It was a little bit deeper the second night. Guys were sharing stuff that was a little bit more personal the second night. And then the next day we got up and we did more stuff. We went whitewater rafting together. That was a blast, man. Do you know you can do this thing called ride the bull? Have any of you ever heard of this? You get in a whitewater raft, a perfectly good seaworthy craft, and for some reason you decide that you want to sit on the front of it with your feet dangling out, holding this rope that's attached to a metal ring on the front, and then go down the rapids. And they call it riding the bull, yeah, because it looks like you're riding the bull. And so that was a great experience. We only had probably half a dozen dumped out of our group, out of the 8 or 10 rafts that we had. And then we got together again that night, and now things got even a little bit deeper. But we never ever said, all right, you 4, you're in this group, and you 6, you're in this group, and you 5, you're in this group. And I know you don't know each other, but that's all right. Okay, the theme for the day is sexual immorality. Discuss. Because it doesn't work like that. Look, there's this very specific ways that guys form relationships. All right, so flip your sheets over. I'm going to show you exactly how guys form relationships. It's called the relational diamond. The relational diamond. This is exactly how guys form relationships. So for those of you that can't see it, draw what looks like, as best as you can draw, a baseball diamond on your sheet of paper. A baseball diamond on your sheet of paper. And at first base, put the word acquaintances. Put the word acquaintances. And then underneath that, you can write accept one another. Accept one another. And then up at second base, you put the word friends. And underneath that, you can put the words encourage one another. And then over at third base, you can put the word brothers. And then put the words exhort one another. And then down at home plate, you can put the words Christ-like. Now, this is the way that guys form relationships with each other. They start as acquaintances. You have something in common. You work in the same place. You go to the same church. You play golf at the same club. You have kids on the same soccer team. These are acquaintances. You might know somebody's name, but you've got some... Now, the other thing about acquaintances is you share some kind of common purpose. You all want your 8-year-old girls to win the soccer game. That's a shared common purpose. You all go to this church, and so you're all at least at some various level interested in finding out more about God. You all want to keep getting your paycheck from the same company. So you all want the company to be successful so you can keep getting paid. These are acquaintances. These are not friends. These are acquaintances. These are people you know. We have a lot of acquaintances. Guys have a lot of acquaintances. But this is the fine stage. How you doing? Fine. Right? Now, if you were to ever get in a smaller group of guys that would maybe do a Bible study together or do a small group study together, you have to recognize that you don't start off as friends or brothers. If you don't know them very well, you start off as acquaintances. I think one of the biggest I don't know if disappointment is the right word, but we'll use that word for now. The biggest disappointments the guys have when they walk in here is if they do walk in, they think, oh, I'm going to sit with these guys, and man, we're going to get tight quick. Guys, we're here for how much time do we have to talk? 20 minutes a week? Especially if we pray together and Pat goes a few minutes over? 20 minutes a week. Can you really get that deep 20 minutes a week? No, but that's okay because it is what it is. Or the other side, guys go, Bible study at tables? I'm going to have to sit around with a bunch of guys and share all my deep, dark, intimate secrets. I don't want to do that. No. Because we're still, when you walk into a group, you're at the acquaintance level. You're just learning to accept one another. So once you have this common purpose, this thing that you're all have in common, then you start moving towards friends. Now, to get from acquaintances to friends, you need one thing and one thing only. Conflict. You need something to go wrong, and you guys agree to work it out. Right? Because that's really what a friend is, when you think about it. A friend is somebody who you can have a disagreement with and still have a relationship after the disagreement. And so to move from acquaintances to friends, typically what happens is some kind of conflict happens. Now, it may not be a conflict between you. You might share a conflict together. That's why softball teams, man, you'll see guys on softball teams become friends because, those jerks from the bar down the street laughed at us when they beat us 18-2 last time. We're going to kill them this time. Right? But something when you move from just accepting somebody to actually caring about them to the point that you want them to do better, that's encouraging one another, that's moving to friends. And you typically move through some kind of a conflict together. Now, rounding second is the hardest part. When you round second and go into third, it's moving from friends to brothers. And this is the first time that you see a new word come into this, and this word is accountability. Accountability. Now, I don't want to pick on anybody's churches, but I've heard too many churches do this. They go, all right, we're going to form new men's accountability groups. You can't do that. Because, listen, accountability without relationship is legalism. Accountability outside of a relationship is legalism. That's, I'm smarter than you, so I get to tell you that what you're doing is wrong. How many of you like to have relationships like that? No. You see, you've got to go through the process of getting to know somebody, having a common purpose, going through some kind of conflict together, some kind of disagreement or shared task that you come out on the other side and you go, you know what? I like this guy. I don't always agree with him, but I like this guy. I think I want to spend more time with him. And that's when you finally get to the point where you start sharing things about yourself that you want to be held accountable for. So that's when we become brothers. That's what exhorting is all about. It's helping each other be the person that we want to be by holding each other accountable for not being who we said we wanted to be. Not holding each other accountable for not being who I want you to be, but holding you accountable for what you said you wanted to be. I said that I wanted to be like Christ. Okay, well, good. Then when you're not, I'll tell you, and when I'm not, you tell me. That's what brothers do. And then finally, once brothers have really spent time together, especially Christian brothers, eventually the relationship has to point outwards. It can't just point inwards anymore. And that's when guys start doing things like building houses together, or going on mission trips together, or doing some kind of shared task. Now, here's the deal. What happens in most of our churches? We go backwards. We go backwards. We say, all right, here we go, guys. Be brothers. Woohoo! Get into an accountability group. We're going to give you 20 questions to ask each other every week. Man in the Mirror puts out the 20-question card. All right? We're going to give you 20 questions to ask each other every week. And you're going to ask each other these questions, and you're going to hold each other accountable. And it's like going to confession, Brother Brett, I looked at 3 pictures on the internet that I shouldn't have this week, and I spoke cross words to my wife, and I was too tired to pray with my kids on Tuesday and Friday nights. And, it's just not real, right? And so for a lot of guys, they walk into a church and they're told that they're supposed to be brothers like that. And they go kind of like screaming off into the night. Actually, they don't do that. You know what they do? They slink away into the night. You don't know that there's a problem. You don't know that they felt the heebie-jeebies when somebody that they didn't know, sort of started really, putting their hand on their shoulder and shaking their hand and saying, "How you doing today, brother?" As he knocks his Bible off his lap. It's just weird. It's icky. It's gross. It's creepy crawly. Have you guys ever felt that way in a church? I felt that way in a church. Some guy comes up to me and I'm like, "I don't even know you. What are you doing? Take a step back." Get out of my space a little bit. I'm happy to talk to you. I'm happy to get to know you. But man, don't be in my face. I don't need that. I don't want that. Men relate to each other shoulder to shoulder. Shoulder to shoulder. Not face to face. We'll get to face to face. We'll get to the point where we're looking each other in the eye and having that tough talk. But you know what? You don't walk into a church and find the guy that you can call at 2 a.m. It takes time. It takes time. So, if you're a leader in a church, don't do that. Don't go the wrong way around the relational diamond, and don't let the guys around you go the wrong way around the relational diamond. And if you're not a leader in a church, if you're just a guy that's trying to sort of make it, and you're feeling guilty because you walked into a church and you see these guys that seem to have these close relationships, and then they sort of turn their attention on you, and you feel weird about it, and you're thinking, "Man, there must be something wrong with me. I mean, obviously these guys are just trying to be nice." Don't feel guilty because you're just feeling a natural way. Let it take its course. It takes time for guys to form relationships, to form brotherly relationships. Here's what we're going to do. I need four guys to help me. So Jim Seibert's going to help me, and what's your name? Ken's going to come up and help me. Come on up here, Ken, and why don't you come up and help me? What's your name? Steve. Steve's going to come up and help me, and I need one more. Don, thank you. Wow, that was great how you just jumped up there. All right, so Ken right here, and Steve, maybe you get on this side of Ken here, and all right, now, here's four guys. Four, reasonably cool-looking guys, all right? And here's four guys that are just in a church, and they don't really know each other, right? Do you guys know each other? Now, I pulled them all from 4 different tables, so they may know each other a little bit. But they've all got a common purpose. They're all here at the Bible study together, so they all want to know at least something. And so they form a group together. They say, "You know what? Let's start doing something together. Let's start. Maybe we'll even have a small group or a Bible study or something like that together." But at first, this is what they look like. They're just four guys. Now, here's what I want you to think about. All around us, the world, our own flesh, and the devil are constantly assaulting us, constantly trying to pull us away from Christ, right? And so the devil comes along and see, these guys, I can sort of, well, you guys get the hang of it. I can sort of push them around, all right? Now, as they sort of become acquaintances and they sort of go around this thing and they start getting to know each other, it goes from the chin thing to actually like first name basis, and somebody they go from "Hey, did you catch the Spurs game on TV last night?" to maybe remembering something that they said last time and asking them about it. "Hey, how'd your daughter do in that soccer game you were telling me about?" So what happens then is they start to link arms. So link arms, guys. Now, as you can get a little closer, as they form relationships with each other now, you'll notice that they're sort of a little bit more shoulder to shoulder. But here's something else I want you to notice. See, Steve, right? See, Jim and Steve, they're a little bit more into the game than Ken and Don are. So look, I can push on Jim, and these guys have these other guys holding them up. Now, I want you to notice Don, he's not sure yet, right? So I can still push him a little bit, and if I took a run at Ken, see, I can sort of push Ken around here too, right? Now, so they start to do more stuff together. They go through some conflict together. Somebody finally tells Don that cologne is just hideous. and he's got to change it, and he gets all offended, but they work through it. Somebody says to Jim, you really need to stop cussing at the ladies in the church parking lot as you're driving out, and he doesn't like that, but they deal with it, or whatever. Now here's an interesting thing that happens. As they sort of, come on with me, as they sort of start dealing with conflict together and they move from acquaintances to friends, look at this. Now they're all holding each other up. I can push on these guys, and I could even move them, but if I move one, what do? I move them all, right? So they're really supporting each other, okay? So these guys are friends. They're encouraging one another. They're talking to one another. They're holding each other up. Now, when it really gets good, though, and this might take 6 months, this might take 18 months, this might take 10 weeks for guys that kind of knew each other before they got into this. But now what I want you guys to do is everybody turn around and lock arms again, so you're facing out. Okay, so now they're linked arms, but they're facing out. Now here's where it gets good, because look at this. I can get to Jim, but Jim can see me coming. I can get to Don, but Don can see me coming. I can get to Ken here, but Ken can see me coming. I can get to Steve, but Steve can see me coming. I want to get to Don's back. I got to go through Steve, because Steve's got Don's back. How would you like to have somebody watching your back? I would love to have somebody watching my back. And this is what happens. When you get into a relationship with guys and you let it take its time and you move from acquaintances to friends and from friends to brothers, you end up with a band of brothers, not guys that are telling you what to do and how to live your life, but guys that are watching your back. And that's what brothers do. They watch each other's backs. I want somebody watching my back. Give these guys a hand. Thank you, guys. All right. Look, we were not meant to do this thing alone. God said from the very beginning, it's not good for us to be alone. In Proverbs 27:17, it says what? As iron sharpens iron, so, come on, some of you know it, one man sharpens another. In all the Gospels, the same story is told, but in Mark 6, it's told where Jesus grouped the disciples up 2 by 2, and he sent them off. He did not say, you know what, there's 12 of you, we can cover twice the territory if you guys go out by yourselves. He said, nope, 2 by 2. And I'm going to give you both the same instructions so you can keep each other going. And you know what, if they don't like you in a town, shake the dust off your feet. I'll take care of them later. Trust me. Right? But he sent them out 2 by 2. So I told you about when I was in college, I had this fraternity thing, right? And I had these guys watching my back. So now fast forward. I helped start a software company, and my dad was involved with it about 6 years ago. And I got really, really, really into the software company. See, I thought we were going to get rich. And I thought I was doing it for my family. So one day I called my wife because I had to go on another last-minute business trip. And I said, honey, I'm really sorry. I know I got this another trip. We had 2 small children at home. My wife on the phone said this phrase to me that just is seared into my memory. She said this. She said, I said, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Really sorry. I got to go on this trip. She said, that's okay. It's easier when you're not here. And I went, oh, crap. Only I didn't say crap. And so I went home and I said, what's the deal? And she said, you're building this company. I understand. I'm just tired of keeping meals warm until they're ruined. I'm tired of you saying you're going to be home at 5:30 and you get home at 8:30. I'm tired of having, frankly, a better relationship with you on the phone from a hotel halfway across the country than I am face-to-face. I'm tired of you being so tired that all you really do is either ignore us or yell at us when we make too much noise. Just go on your trip. It's fine. And I knew that I was in trouble. My church handed out copies of The Man in the Mirror about 4 weeks before this happened. And my wife had been in a Sunday night women's group for a while, and one of the husbands called all the husbands of these women, and said, I'm thinking that maybe we should get together, because I'm pretty sure they're talking about us and we might need to protect ourselves. And I knew they were because I'd heard stories about him from my wife. So So, by the way, wives do that, just to keep that in mind. So I said, sure, let's do it. What are we going to read? And he said, we're going to read this book, The Man in the Mirror. And I said, well, all right, that's cool. I'll bring that. And so we went through this book together. Now, I didn't know Pat Morley. I didn't know there was a Bible study. I didn't know he lived in Orlando. I knew nothing. All I knew was they handed out a book in church. My wife really didn't want me around. And these guys invited me to become part of a group with them. And so we read this book together. And over the course of 6 months, we moved from acquaintances to friends. When we moved from acquaintances to friends, by the way, if you guys left, they didn't like the conflict, found out that they didn't really gel with us well. We went from like 8 guys to 5 guys. And then we turned the corner at friends, man, and all of a sudden, all the crap came out. The guy struggling with porn sites. The guy struggling with other sexual issues. The guy abandoning his wife so that he could do a company thing. All this stuff started coming out. And we locked arms, first face to face and then eventually back to back. And we walked each other through those times. Those guys had my back. They saved my marriage. In many ways, they saved my marriage. I didn't know how important they were until about 10 weeks later. I called my wife one night. The company was tanking at this point. I called my wife and I said, on a Tuesday night when our group met, and I said, I'm just going to come home. I'm too tired to go to the group tonight. And she said, are you kidding me? I said, what? I just want to be with you, honey. And she said, do you have any idea how much of a better husband you've been since you've been going to that group? You're going to that group, buddy. And so I stood up in my most manly voice and said, yes, ma'am. And I went to my group to that night. See, our wives want us to have brothers too. Our wives want us to have brothers too. They may not call it that, but they want us to have brothers too because they know that that's what we need. So don't feel bad if somebody tries to take you backward around the diamond and you don't like it. Call a timeout. Take a step back. But find some guys that you can get to know. Find some guys that you can go through conflict together and become friends. And then eventually that will evolve into being brothers. Because we all need someone to cover our back. We all need someone that we can call at 2 o'clock in the morning. We all need someone who won't let us sit by the pool for 38 years by ourselves when all the help we need is just a few steps away. We all need a band of brothers. And so the big idea is the title. The big idea is this. Every man needs a band of brothers. So guys, go find yourselves a band of brothers. Maybe it's here, maybe it's in your churches, maybe it's elsewhere. But go find yourselves a band of brothers. Let me pray. Father, you made us for relationship. You made us to have brothers around us that will help us as we are in this great adventure, this great journey towards being like you, towards working for you and serving you and Father, really finding our purpose and meaning in you. So, Lord, I ask for every man here that you would bring around him a band of brothers, that you would give him patience to work through the process, but also, Father, that you would bring great reward for that. Give us perseverance and strength, Lord. In your name we pray. Amen.